Welcome to the Mindfulness of Singing, and I'm Denise, your sassy, spunky scientist.
And I'm Tony, your bubbly, big-hearted flower child.
Our podcast features practical tips and tools for a journey of transformation using the healing power of your voice.
Each podcast, we will delve into the mind, body, and spirit connection by interviewing inspirational guests, sharing personal stories, and discussing the most recent scientific research.
Tune in and join our community of mindful singers.
Happy May. It's Mother's Day weekend.
It is. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank
And-
you.
And to all our listeners. This probably won't come out in time for that. It certainly won't come out in time to celebrate, but
All our listeners that are moms.
yes. And
Right.
and
And have a mom.
everybody,
Everybody.
so may not have had the relationship that they want to celebrate, but
Right.
we celebrate the mother figure and the divine energy in all of us. That covers everybody.
There you go. Of course. There it is.
So I have a word for today, Denise, and I'm trying to talk about things that are related to our guest. And this word is definitely related to our guest that we're having today. And, we're all about mindfulness and health and wellness and singing. And you can eat the best food. You can drink the best water. You can do yoga. You can have a spiritual practice. You can do so many things that are good for your body. But if you're missing this one thing, your life will not be as rich as it possibly could be. And if there's anything that COVID has taught us, it's the value of this. You know what it is? Yeah. Starts with a C.
Connection.
Bingo! I knew my smart girlfriend would get it. So, yeah, it is so valuable.
What is connection?
Yeah, there you go. Brava. So, but we can look at the people who have thrived during COVID and the ones who have struggled. In fact, I know some younger people who've told me they've lost people to suicide because they're just so lonely. And I have been. I mean, we're shifting out of it now, but so our guest today, excuse me, if you're not watching, I'm drinking water. Anyway, our guest today, EM Squared, and their whole thing is about community and connection. And I'll talk about them in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about you because Denise,
folks, this is going to be really boring.
no. I wanted to celebrate something that Denise has done during COVID that's all about connection. She started a podcast, if you're unaware. This is not the only podcast that she hosts. She has High Notes with Dr. B. And in that podcast, she's doing a friendship series. And I heard the first one and it was fantastic. If you're a public radio fan and you like stories, how they'll tell about the story and then interview the people and come back and forth. She did that really beautifully. And I wanted to hear part two. And this morning I had my morning walk and I was on my podcast on my phone and I could not find that. Do you know off the top of your head what episode is the second one for the friendship series? Has that come out?
Season 2, episode 2.
Well, I couldn't find it. So I listened to other things. But I do want to hear the next set of friends because I so enjoyed, and I want to encourage all of our listeners to check out Denise's other podcast. Don't leave this one; you can do both. High Notes with Dr. B, and
Now I'm curious, like what's happening.
now she's going to check it out. But maybe it was just me, operator error.
No.
I could
All
find a lot of others, but I couldn't find the second friendship series. But we'll talk about that later. So,
Yeah.
the whole point was that she has reached out to connect women to other women who are doing exciting things, and the importance and value of friendship. And our guest, the EM Squared, stands for the fact that their names are, I'll give their introduction now, and we'll talk more a little bit about community. But we're going to bring on Emily Martin, get that, Emily Martin, EM, and Elizabeth McDonald, EM, are EM Squared, a high energy and ideas driven duo who are raising collaboration to the power of two. EM Squared Connect provides mentorship coaching to creatives who are looking to discover their best artistic life. With a combined experience of over 40 years as performers, teachers, and entrepreneurs, Emily and Elizabeth work with creatives to guide them through a process driven system to change the narrative around what a successful artistic life looks like. You can find out more about them by visiting em2connect.com, and you can join their new community, From the Voice of, a free platform intended to help all artists connect in order to elevate their professional skills in an equitable and proactive way. So the reason I chose connections because they're all about connection, and helping artists move forward in the artistic community. And so, Denise, I have some other things to say about connection, but I wonder if you would like to chime in.
Mm. Well, uh, COVID, I mean, has been, at first, it was really difficult for me because, I'm really high energy and like to be around a lot of people. And I have a very extroverted um, side of me. I'm what people call a introverted thinking extroverter. Extro, I don't know, extrovert, like people who are into Myers-Briggs or whatever. They're always like, "Oh, you're an introverted thinker," and I do live in my head a lot. But uh, um, I have to say that once we sort of got over the hump, I was okay as long as I could do something else, which starts with a C. As long as I could be. Any thoughts?
Connecting, communing, chatting.
No, creative.
Oh, yes, of
As long
course.
as I could be creative and as long as I could still collaborate, however that was, with
All these
people
C's.
that I like to be creative with. And luckily, as much as I hate Zoom sometimes and hate the meetings, like some days I was on Zoom for like 10 hours a day,
I can't
you know,
imagine how you did
and
that.
that gets old very fast. But when you're teaching every voice student on Zoom and you're having every faculty meeting on Zoom, and then you're trying to see your friends or people you have, things that you need to do with them, that, oh man, that got old fast. Uh, but as long as I could be creative and that kind of thing. But after a while, I really got tired of just being in the house. Um, and I dig my husband, but I needed some new fresh faces. I can't imagine doing COVID alone in an apartment or in a house all by yourself, unless that's a thing that you're really, that you really dig. A lot of
But
introverts did not struggle with COVID.
but even introverts need some connection. If you look at like the blue zones where they thrive and they have all those other elements of health, one of the big things that they have in all the blue zones is a sense of community and connection.
Sure, of
And
course.
And I think also too with less people connected to, I think church as a society provided community and connection for a lot of people, and that's not a part of many people's lives anymore. And so that element is missing for that support group. I mean,
Hmm.
people can find it in other ways. I'm not preaching about that, no pun intended. I'm just saying that if you look up and research, we are in even before COVID, loneliness and isolation are a psychological issue, which you probably know more about in your studies and everything. But I think that's brought it to a head. And as we're coming out of COVID, I find myself being an extrovert who needs a lot of downtime, but I do relate more on the scale of extrovert.
I think
It
it's really I think young people really struggled with it, especially because I would just remember when I was young and I had been on the road with a group out of Nashville and I had done that for 2 years and I was burnt out and wanted to, have a sense of home. And so when I got off the road, I sold my condo that I had in Nashville and moved back home with mom and dad to regroup for a little bit. Lord have mercy. And that was a disastrous decision, but my mom and dad loved it, of course. But I'm like 23 years old, and I'm trying to figure out whether I want to go back to school or what I want to do, because I've been on the road with 7 people in a van, pulling a trailer, like being everything from the singer to the road manager to the roadie. I mean, it was like, oh, 2 years. It was some of the best times of my life, but also some of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
So like really intense connection there. And then I moved home, and I had my mom and dad lived in a completely different city. They lived in Lexington, Kentucky. I did not know a soul. I did not have friends. And it was the loneliest, even though I'm in the house with my mom and dad, it was the loneliest time I think I ever experienced in my life, because I so needed connection with people my own age. And my son had that experience during COVID. He was living with his dad and stepmom, and living in an upstairs apartment, and he was just really, really unhappy. I went and picked him up recently to bring him home. He's like weighs 150 pounds. He's 6'2". He just was so hungry, not literally, but
But actually,
figuratively,
physically too.
for friends, for connection, for his own age group. So, and I think that sometimes as parents, we just don't get it. We're like, what do you mean you need well, I'm here, like I should be enough. I'm your mother, but you're not enough, mom. You have to have they really need connection with like-minded, like age folks. And he's very extroverted too, so he needed that social connection that he wasn't getting, and just misery for 18 months.
We're
So
hardwired to be a part of a tribe.
absolutely.
I
And
mean,
when your tribe is long ways away, you can't spend enough time on Zoom for that. So no, I know that young people, especially in their early 20s, mid 20s, really, really suffered during COVID. I know that for sure. So yes, I hope everybody has a tribe, and I hope that everybody gets to for some people, family is their tribe. Like I know folks who, my sister is part of my tribe, right? And a lot of people, they have their family, their siblings, their cousins. But COVID made a lot of those family things. A lot of people died from those and got sick, and from being not careful,
and
because you dying, literally you're dying to be with
wow.
somebody else. It's a tough. I'm glad we're sort of coming out of it, and it appears, and I hope everybody gets vaccinated. I am due for my second shot on Wednesday, so I'll be
I second.
completely covered.
Good for
I feel
you.
pretty good, because they say that after the first one, after so many weeks of the first one, you're like 89% covered. So I did loosen up a little bit. Like you and I met. We actually met in person. That was awesome.
Speaking of, I mentioned to someone in a podcast that you're with a good friend when you spend a couple days together. And I feel like we had just started. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
even caught up. Like there's so many things to talk about. And I mentioned that to my mother, and she's just can't even comprehend that because she's not a talker. I know that's you're wondering if I fell off the turnip truck, but
I
um,
met your dad. He was a talker.
yeah, yeah, that's where it comes from. But yeah, we need like-minded people, and so kudos to Emily and Elizabeth for creating a tribe for singers and artists. And they have a beautiful logo and website. Check them out, and we're going to learn more from them in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think they do more than what you're talking about too. They have some other things.
Yeah, yeah, they do. We'll let them expound upon that. I wasn't comfortable. I did join to get their newsletter so I can learn more about that too.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Okay. Hey Tony, I hear we have a fantastic announcement.
We do indeed. Denise, where are you going to be on Tuesday, June 15th at 7 o'clock?
Tuesday, June 15th at 7 o'clock. Tuesday, June 15th from 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
Eastern Daylight Time, very important. Molto
Eastern
importante.
Standard Daylight Time.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm trying to. Oh, I know where I'm going to be. I'm going to be with you.
There
And we're
you
going to
go.
be doing a play shop.
That's right. It's time to play, and we want you all to come and join us so it's even more fun. This is a chance to explore singing and meditation and good vibrations, and we guarantee fun. So come and play and join us. When are you going to be there, Denise?
June the 15th at 7 o'clock, and that's a Tuesday. And I will have gotten off work if I'm working, and I will have fed my family or eaten my dinner or whatever. And then I'll be ready to do something for myself because self-care is important.
Yes, indeed. Yes, this is great self-care. Self-care for your body, your mind, your spirit, and inspiration for singing. So we can't wait for you to join us. And I bet they're wondering, how do they join us, Denise? What do they need to do?
They need to go to the mindfulnessofsinging.com
And
and register.
register right on the website. So let's get back to the podcast. We can't wait to see you all on Tuesday, June 15th, 7 o'clock.
I'm going to be there.
I'm going to be there too.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi,
Fine.
ladies. How are you?
Nice to
Yeah.
see you all. I don't know who is who because your names are not on your.
Oh, they should be. I see them. Emily and Elizabeth.
They're not on. Well, y'all are going to keep me guessing because I'm in the dark. I don't see them on my. Oh, no, now they are. Now they are. Okay, Emily, Elizabeth. Nice to meet you. In fact, funny to see you because when I went on your website, I'm like, oh my gosh, they even look alike. You know, like.
No, they don't. Come on. They don't look alike.
Yes, they do.
How
We planned
so?
it. We planned it.
They're both brunettes. They're both fair coloring. No, I think they do. You don't think they
It's it's the only reason I'm working with her.
do? Ah! Well, as you can
Okay.
see, Denise and I are like identical twins. Ha, 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 ha.
Not in any way. Not in any way.
Anyway, not anyway. So it's so
So-
nice to have you both this morning, Emily and Elizabeth.
It's so nice to be here. We just want to introduce ourselves really quickly. So Elizabeth, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. I'm Elizabeth McDonald, and my pronouns are she and her. And I recognize that I'm on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee, and I'm calling in from Canada. And I have long light brown curly hair, and I'm wearing a black sweater, and I'm wearing glasses, and I'm sitting in a room with a large bookshelf and an antique door behind me. And I just looked out the window, and there are about 20-foot flames outside right now. Someone's burning some brush. So I'm sorry I was a little late.
Oh my goodness. Well,
But it's all
safe.
Yeah.
fine. It's all fine.
Okay.
It's all fine.
And I'll
Anyway,
just say
Emily.
my name is Emily Martin. My pronouns are she and her. Today I'm coming to you from my home in Vinyl Haven, Maine, but I recognize that I'm on the traditional lands of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Micmac peoples. I have shoulder-length brown hair and I'm wearing black glasses. I'm sitting in a room facing two windows at a desk. There you go.
That's beautiful. I'm going to be really ignorant here and be very vulnerable and say, did you all do the setting for the visually impaired?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, to be honest, because Elizabeth's in Canada, we actually always do a land acknowledgement before we start any of our workshops. But we actually interviewed somebody recently, and we had heard about the introducing yourself with the way you look for the visually impaired, but we have never done it before. So we interviewed somebody recently who had done that, and we thought, oh, what a wonderful way to do it. So we're playing with different ways of introducing ourselves, and we think that's a great way to sort of start.
I
It
caught
is.
all
That's
of
amazing.
the pronouns. I'm still digesting their introduction before we even get started on the call. And you
Well,
said,
and also just with the visually impaired, and we, as Emily and I, are part of a trio, Women on the Verge, and some of the inclusive work we have been doing includes, American Sign Language in conjunction with performing, and so we've sort of tried to build more inclusivity into our practice, and we encourage everybody to sort of consider that. So anyway, that's
I
us.
think that's great. That's amazing. I
Right.
just was sat here and was like transported, because that's what my brain does. I was transported to a future recital I have coming up and thinking about someone doing sign language to that for the hearing impaired.
Yeah,
And I
it's
started
pretty
thinking
incredible.
about
Hmm.
if they can't hear me sing, what would that be like for them?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
would
grew up
think
in a
that'd be
family where my parents were both teachers of the deaf. So,
Oh, wow.
and my husband has an aunt who was deaf. And so it's sort of always been in sort of my zeitgeist of my community
Sure.
and stuff. So we've just sort of realized how unaware we can be as, not visually impaired, not hearing impaired, and white women especially. So anyway, thank
Yeah,
you for having us today.
You're welcome, and I feel really stupid right now. Just
Mm-mm.
simply because I
No.
can't believe I've never thought about that before. Like,
Well,
No,
I mean,
I think
to
the
be
whole point is that we
I
share
know.
and talk about that, right?
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
and to be
Yeah.
honest, like
Wow.
I do think it's a generational thing, right? So I think we hadn't really thought about it either
Absolutely.
until we started thinking, until we started meeting more people and talking with more people.
Mhm.
We actually have a program and a commission with our trio called Women on the Verge, where we've been doing a lot of things with sign language and all of those kinds of things. So it's just, we're learning too. So it's all good.
I love that name, Women on the Verge. Like, what are you on the verge of? Sometimes I'm on the verge of like not good stuff. So what are you on the verge of?
Yeah.
I love
I
it.
imagine
I
theirs
love
is
the
more
name, but it
positive than
conjures so many things. Tell us what
It
you're on the
does.
verge of.
Um, well, the whole thing was, it stemmed from us wanting to share stories of women, share women's stories, and so we commissioned Canadian female composers. Two of us are Canadian. There's a third person that's not on this call, my colleague
Okay.
from University of Toronto, Catherine Tremills. And so we wanted to tell the stories of women, and we wanted to commission women composers, or female and female identified composers. And we've just taken those stories on the road over the last few years. And what's interesting is that, or not interesting, is that we had a commission that basically got canceled because of COVID. It was supposed to be premiered a year ago. And while Emily and I were sitting, sort of spending so much time on Zoom together, we sort of went, what other work do we want to be doing? And so that actually, it's from that trio that then we started EM2 Connect and From the Voice of Community. So Emily and I have been working together for a long time, and talking about all of these issues and stories, and like the two of you, probably spend way too much time together.
no, not way too much, not enough.
No, not enough. Oh, okay, good.
Are you
We
guys
spend way
close
too much
to
time
each
together.
other? Are you fairly close to each other? No.
Oh,
So
you
you
mean-
spend all your time together on Zoom?
Yes.
Yes, because
Now,
I'm in
do you
Canada
both
and she's in the
teach?
US.
Do you both teach at university, or
Yeah,
do you have home
I actually
studios, or-
I just got tenure at my university this year. So
Congratulations.
yes. So I teach at university. Yes, we both teach at university, and we both have some sort of studios, home studios as well. So yeah, we do all the things.
Yeah,
So-
I teach at the University of Toronto. I'm actually an adjunct instructor there, but I have basically a full-time gig. So
Yeah, I feel like we should have crossed paths, Elizabeth, just simply because I was at the University of Toledo,
okay.
for 8 years, which means that you and I were on the same Nats regional.
Yes.
And I came up to Toronto when the Nats regional was at Toronto about 4 years ago, and Shannon
Okay.
Coates was the bitch with the clipboard.
That is such a good descriptor of Shannon.
Yeah, we love
She's
Shannon.
not a bitch at all. I love her so
no,
much.
we
I know,
love her so
I
much
know.
too.
But
Yeah.
but you know what I'm saying? Like, she was running that shit. She was running it.
Yeah.
You couldn't even, like, she's like, nope, you go there. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's Shannon. Shannon's been like that since, always.
Well, it's so funny because we do a Saturday morning Instagram live every morning at 9 a.m. and talk about various things. And actually, Shannon was on this morning. So we were having a great conversation. She actually didn't speak, she was just commenting, but we were having a great, because we love Shannon and we will promote everything that Shannon does. And so it's great because we actually were just interacting with her. And I think that's a great descriptor and in a good way.
What,
Yeah,
what a
absolutely.
small world, because she was our guest for our podcast just this that we just
I know. I listened to it last week. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I dig her so much. And I'm always like, if I'm going to go to a conference, I'm like, I'm fine. There are two people, Canadians, that I try to see if they're going, and it's Vicky St. Pierre and Shannon Coates, because the three of us together are ridiculous. People,
That's right.
Oh, no, stay away from them.
Yes.
So now,
And they're like,
so now
who's
I have
the
to
midget with those really tall people?
Yeah.
Because anyway, people at this point are either are going to turn us off because they're like, I don't care what these people are talking about. So we should probably talk about something
I was
beneficial.
gonna pull us back to that, because you said something that was one of my questions. EM squared developed during COVID. Is that correct? This did not exist pre-COVID.
That's correct.
How was it was born because of this concert that got canceled with another person, or can you explain how it came to launch?
Sure. Shannon. Hey, who's my partner? Emily? Do you wanna take that one? Do you like that? I got Shannon on the mind.
So the concert got canceled, and Elizabeth and I actually had already started talking about how we could work together and all those good things. And so honestly, we were home all the time. We already were talking all the time. We're very close friends as well, but we also respect each other hugely when it comes to how both of us are teachers, how we interact with our students, how we're also mentors to our students. So we started talking about, and I will be honest, it was mostly me. I'm a huge driver. So I actually really, and I hate to say this, I think everybody reacted to COVID differently, but I really loved being at home because I could really focus on some of the things that I wanted to do for a long time. And so I started talking with Elizabeth about what does it look like for us to start formally mentoring people and formally coaching people and using the skills. And I love you guys say on your website, with over 50 years experience. We say with over 40 years experience, and we have so much experience in so many ways. We both were performers internationally, and very similar to you guys. We're teachers, so many things. I'm a yoga teacher as well, and we all have certifications in lots of different things. And so we said, what does that look like? And so we also knew we wanted to have a lot of community and build a community that was not like Facebook, and to build a community that was really about supporting each other and supporting singers. And we also recognized that singers were going to change. The singing world was going to change hugely after COVID, and the pipeline was going to be broken. That has always been around. So these were all these ideas that we had, and we were like, how can we keep working on them and doing them and providing that support that we always wanted but never had? So that's where EM2 was built, came out of the genesis of it. And that started in August of 2020. And then we've just been on a mission since then to do it all. So I don't know, Elizabeth, if you want to read our mission statement or anything, or talk a little bit more about the parts of EM2.
Well, I mean, you've said a great part of the genesis, and basically EM is our initials, and there's two of us. So it's the idea of taking the experience of two people and compounding it for our coaching clients and mentees. And so then our goal is to identify what a mentee would already knows, and then we work to encourage the ownership of that knowledge, and then we work to facilitate something based on what they already know and what they're looking to do. And so that's sort of like the focus of the coaching and the mentorship, which we can talk about those as two separate pieces. And so then under that umbrella is then from the voice of community, which Emily alluded to. And because we didn't want to do it on Facebook for a variety of reasons, There's so many new platforms popping up. I don't know if you know, there's this whole concept of community, especially now through COVID and being online. We found the Mighty Network, and they create basically a platform for you to have your own community, and you can gate it or not. Ours is free. And you can do events right inside it. And it has all of these amazing, powerful tools for us to produce things and to have conversations. And so we really just wanted to start a conversation about bringing people together to redefine what success means in this changing industry, right? Like Emily said, the pipeline is broken. And so where do we go to have those conversations? And what kind of space can we create that's inclusive, that's accessible? So we've kept it free. And then how do we support and transform people's artistic practice as we move forward? And so we're offering programming and creating a diverse community. We have an equity and action mandate within that. And then just sort of like, again, all of our posts and all of our community building is really about trying to point out opportunities for people that they might not have made connections to. So that,
and also redefining success, right?
Yeah.
So is your target kind of a professional singer who's trying to find their way, their niche? Is that kind of who you're not talking about a young singer that's in school, or how clarify the community a little bit for me?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because, well, I don't know if it's interesting, but it's funny. Let's say it's funny. It's funny because Emily and I are always talking about who do we want to be? Who do we want to surround ourselves with, right? And to our mind, it's not just the singer. It's anybody who has an artistic practice. So we actually have collaborative pianists, and we have dancers, and of course our network is a singing network, but from that, you know that the ripples just continue. So actually, although right now it's a lot of singers and it's a lot of young artists, but it's also a lot of our generation of singer that are having a moment of, where are we going next? And where am I going next in my own career? And I ask myself that all the time, especially through COVID, right? There's so much job precarity, regardless of where you are as an artist. And those of us in academia are even seeing job precarity. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty lucky. I have a contract, but I'm guaranteed work each year. But you're only guaranteed work if there's clients, right? And so that whole conversation about what is your next step is not limited to young artists or early career artists. It's actually the conversation we're all having. So maybe not as many young singers that are in school because they're already in a support network, but definitely once you're at a school and you're looking for support, our community is the goal of our community is to be a place where you can come to find that. So
beautiful.
Well, we also sorry.
What was the name of the platform that you're using? You said the name.
Mighty Networks.
Mighty Networks, yeah. But you can find us at fromthevoiceof.com, which then just directs you right into the community in that way. So
well, just to go back to the audience you were talking about, I think we also recognize that, as Elizabeth said, we're talking also to people our age, but they're teaching the younger singers, right? So it's Elizabeth also used this word ripple, right? It's a ripple effect. So I would say, Tony, that we try really, really hard to have a huge variety of people. So besides just artists, ages. So for instance, we did a presentation a couple of months ago at the University of Western Australia. And so then those are mostly students. So those students actually are now in our community. So besides being singers, they're students and they're Australian, right? So we really hope and we work super hard on getting a huge variety of audience in there because they all affect each other.
Cool.
Yep. So I'm in your community. I've been in your community probably since around the inception of it. And I thought it was really such a great idea, which is why I was like, Tony, you need to ask these ladies to be on the pod, or I'm going to ask these ladies to be on the podcast. follow up because I thought, now I think you have more than just singers in the front right in
Mhm.
from the voice of right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, what a great idea to not just be about singing and singers, because I feel like you can do that on Facebook and all the voice
Hmm.
teacher groups or whatever.
Hmm.
But this is kind of more about sustainability and mindset in your space. And I like it so much better than any of the Facebook groups that I'm in. I check in on you guys pretty often to see what's going on.
Well, we're so happy that you're in the community, Denise. Thank you for joining us. And the thing is with Facebook that we all love to hate Facebook, right? And I think that Facebook has a particular has value. Like I actually really love going in there and being able to see what people are saying about repertoire, maybe, or various discussions, and there's a critical mass where you can post something and get opinions very quickly, and then that can help sort of determine your direction. One of the things that we wanted though was to look at it also from a business standpoint. So Mighty Networks allows us to own our list. They allow
Oh,
us to
that's good.
control, yeah, they allow us to control a lot of things. And so from one of the things that we find is that as artists, we're not always business minded. And there's lots of coaches that have popped up over the last few years that are really starting to encourage us to think in a different way
Right.
from a business standpoint, and to change the way we bill for our services.
Right.
And so when Emily and I were talking about our coaching and mentorship, we were definitely really influenced by some of the work that Michelle Marquardt DeVoe is doing, and talking about how do we change the conversation around that hourly lesson fee. And we can dig into that or not, but when you look at the work we do in a university setting, if you're not a tenured faculty, you're being paid an hourly wage to teach a voice lesson, but you're being expected to do all of the other things. So it
Right.
ends up that if you're making $100 an hour, you're actually not making $100 an hour. You're
Yeah.
making like
I was about to
maybe.
say that's hilarious, Elizabeth. Maybe in Canada they make $100 an hour, but in the States,
No.
Well, no, and the minute that came out of
no.
my mouth, I was like, right, who's the audience here in Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't tell you how great Canada is. Although we are in
I hear
lockdown
it all
right
the
now
time by
in
my Canadian
Ontario,
friends.
so I basically can't go anywhere. So there's pros and cons, man. But that idea of, so when we are working with people, what does that look like? So we really wanted to think about our business on all levels, not just that one piece of how we build for mentorship, but like, what are the other things we don't think about as artists that we can either control, or that we let go, or that we don't think about? So using the Mighty Networks platform was one of those very intentional, like, how do we build our list?
Yeah.
How do we build our network? How do we build our influence, essentially?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
I was so many thoughts as you were talking, so many thoughts. Let me filter them. So one of the things that Tony and I struggle with is for instance, when somebody's like, hey, you guys, we have what we call a T&D session, and it's very explosive. See what we did there? So the thing is that you go, oh gosh, musicians are generally not wealthy people. Musicians are struggling right now, so maybe we should do it for free. And that's Tony, by the way, who's saying that. And I'm saying, no,
Yeah.
we have to charge for what we're worth. We have a lot to offer someone, and we also have to consider that people actually really do pay for what they value. They'll figure it out. I know I paid for a coach, and at first I was like, I can't afford this. Like, this is expensive. This is more than my car payment, right? And I just put pencil to paper and figured out what that I was going to stop buying shoes and purses for a little while. Figured it out.
That was a sacrifice for her. You laughed.
We all have a shoes and purse equivalent. If it
Elizabeth understands, yeah.
Tony's has experiences and yoga events, and she's got don't let.
It's just not purses and shoes. But yes, I do have my thing.
Yes, she does.
We all do.
Right.
So, Elizabeth, I want you to speak to this, Elizabeth, because she actually has trained me along these lines, Denise.
Okay, so tell us how you overcome that, because I really I feel for it, because I feel for our community of musicians, and I don't want to leave someone out because they're primarily a performer and not performing right now and all of that. And it's so hard. It's like, it's a painful decision to make, to charge what you're worth, and also want people to be able to come that really need what you're doing. How do you get over that, Elizabeth?
Well, the first thing is that why do we feel that way? Where does that come from? We're the only industry that feels that way. So first of all, it's bullshit. So we just need to stop. But I'll back. Sorry, can I swear on your podcast?
Absolutely. I swear all the time.
It wasn't just cussing. I was just because she's always saying, "Don't give away the farm. Give away the farm."
Yeah, Tony, I get it. It was very hard for me. Plus, I also have a full-time job, so it's really easy for me to say, "It's okay. I won't charge for that because I really want to make the community better." So I get it. But let's have Elizabeth talk to this, because she's actually trained me, and now I think I'm more of a so Elizabeth, speak to this.
Well, so I mean, I haven't always been this way, but my husband is a chiropractor, and so he runs his own practice and he owns his own business.
I love him already.
Yeah, I love him too, actually. I love him quite a bit. But he hasn't always been successful. He's an excellent chiropractor, just like we're excellent singers or excellent teachers, but he hasn't always been successful in business. And he has he's been out of school now for 25 years, and he has spent that whole time, he has worked so hard on figuring out his business. And at various times in his career, because we made this decision early on in our marriage that his practice was going to be the financial thing that was going to, we put our eggs in that basket financially. So there were various times where things were not easy for us. And I went and worked in his office, and I did less in my own music practice to work in his office to figure out how we could pay the bills, essentially. And so going through that process and knowing when to let staff go and when you needed to hire new staff and what your nut was each month and your overhead and all of those things, going through that process with him, and then watching him take on coaches and mentors to work on his practice and work on his mindset and work on his discipline. Like, just by sheer virtue of we live in the same house and share the same bed, you can't help but take all that in, whether you want to or not. And that sometimes you do not want to take all of that in, whatever that is, from your husband, right? Or your partner. So I will say that he's been a huge leader for me in that, as far as he has worked so hard to make that happen. And so by virtue of just basically sharing the space and having these conversations in our own household finances and dealing with our own kids and those expenses, that it has really forced me to think about that in my own career. And so I will say that's part of why I'm a lot more clear about that. Plus, I don't have a full-time academic job. I'm an hourly wage employee. I commute 2 hours to my university. My expenses are what they are. And I make decisions each year about how big my studio is based on what my financial goals are in my house, which maybe sounds crazy to people, but those are the realities. So like, for instance, this year during COVID, I had no work last summer. My contract ends April 30th, and I had no summer contracts. Everything had been canceled, all of like the extra teaching and the adjudicating and all that kind of stuff. And I don't make a ton of money through the summer, but it's enough to kind of like carry you until the end of September when you get paid again. And I just thought, what the hell? Like, I need to make sure. I got a kid going to university. I've got another one that's going to be in university soon. My husband does well, but I still contribute to the finances, and we have specific goals in mind. So I took an overload this year because I knew that I was not sure what was going to happen after this year.
Mhm.
And I knew that I could probably manage it because we had to go 100% online. I could probably manage it if I never left my house, which I haven't. And I only spent 40 hours a week on Zoom. Do you know what I mean? And so you make those decisions. You just have to know why you're making those financial decisions. And so then when Emily and I we're starting this business, and as we've continued, it's like, what do we need to get from this to make it worth our time?
Right.
So that was a long rant. I'm
Well,
sorry.
but can I
It's good
actually
though.
just add like two things onto that actually where I come from with this, because I do have a full-time job, is first of all the scarcity mindset. We actually were talking about this morning in our Instagram
Yeah.
live. Singing is based on the scarcity mindset.
Absolutely.
It is based on it. And so our job as educators and mentors at this point in our life is to teach our young students that that is a bad thing. Right. And so when we charge for our time, when we charge for our time, it's not just about I value my own time, so I ask for that, but it's also about educating other people and other artists that they should value their own time.
Not just other artists,
Right.
but your community around you.
Yes.
Exactly. And so I think
Absolutely.
to me, that was a huge part of what Elizabeth and I have talked a lot about, is teaching other people how to value their time. Right. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'll say is that Elizabeth and I also very consciously choose other things in our life where we can give back to our community. So From the Voice Of is a free community. So, my time, if you want to book time with me to do some coaching, mentorship, voice lessons, yeah, I'm going to value my time. But I also know that I am offering a community where you can access us in a certain way. And also we actually do some bartering with students. So they understand our time is still valuable because they have to give us this or do that, in our social media or whatever. And so there are ways to give back to your community without just giving everything away for free,
Right.
and still valuing your own time and still showing people that your time is valuable.
Absolutely. I think it's super important to really try to educate the community around you as well. I find that people who they think, oh, in fact, I just had this experience recently. Somebody got in touch with me and was like, oh, my grandpa's having his 100th birthday and he loves opera but he's not been able to go for a while. And could you come sing at the birthday party? And of course I'm like, oh God. But anyway, so
Yeah, we all dread
I'm
those
like,
calls, don't
really?
we?
Right.
Yeah. And so then I'm like, well, if you'll tell me what the pay is, I might have a student who would love to do it. And they came back with a ridiculous amount. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but no one's gonna. These are highly trained people who have spent a lot of money on their schooling or are spending a lot of money on their schooling.
Mhm.
And just so you know, a musician should make just as much as your local lawyer or an per hour. But since they're a student, we'll back that up because they don't quite yet have their degree. But what would be more in keeping with that in your area? I mean, and you have to
Mhm.
have those kinds of conversations because
Right.
people will say to you, in fact, this week I was in Nashville, blah blah blah. I meet this person who's a business person, and he asked me what my son wants to do, and I said I think he's going to go back to school and get a degree in music, and he literally went like this. Oh, that's too bad.
Oh, when my husband was signing all the papers for some banking stuff a number of years ago, the banker asked me what I did. And when I told him, he went, why do you do that? You don't make any money.
And
So,
that's was what this
yes.
guy followed up with was,
Yep.
he's going to be poor his whole life. And I went, well, it's worked out pretty well for me. By the way, I'm a professional musician. My
Yeah.
Lexus is parked out back. If you'd like to see it. It's on the tag that says sang for it. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Good for you.
and he was like, oh, I'm sorry. Did I offend you? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
kinda.
you did.
Yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbass.
Good. I mean, you're
But,
right.
it's like,
It is educating the community. And I want to thank you, Denise, for having that conversation with those
Yeah.
people that needed a singer, because that is a hard conversation to have. And not
It
all of us
is.
feel comfortable having that conversation, but that is the kind of conversation we need to continue to have. We need to have, and it's not about money, but I've gotten on an airplane a number of times since, the person, this is before COVID, the person next to you asks you what you do. And I say, I'm an opera singer. And they go, oh, you're not fat.
Oh,
Can you be an
all the time. All the
Yeah,
time
and I'm
people are
just
they look
like-
at you from your feet up and go, really?
Right. I know.
You're
It's
tiny.
unbelievable.
How does anything come out of there?
You don't look like an opera singer.
Right. It's this
Like
this
when you watch-
perception.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the perception we've always had to the outside world, right, as professional musicians, but actually it's also the perception we have in our community, right? That is part of that changing. And so maybe even, I don't know, Denise, if you talk to your students about that particular conversation, you probably didn't, but at some point, I'm sure you have, like, you need to ask for more. Like, you need to value your own time.
Yep.
And so I want to thank you from somebody in that community, from somebody in your community saying, thank you for having that conversation.
I think we should all start traveling with Viking horns. And when someone asks us, put it on and go, does this look better? Does this make you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
From now on,
unbelievable.
I'll
I
do
don't know
this.
you, Denise, but I feel like I know that you would do that. So
I totally would.
I'm here for
I
this.
totally would.
But it's like
I'm
saying to a doctor, when somebody says they're a doctor, I'm like, but you don't have a white coat on.
Yeah.
Like,
Or
why?
stethoscope. Where's your stethoscope?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Right. I mean, it's unbelievable to me, this audacity of like saying things
Or-
like that. But
You wouldn't say, can you operate right now? Can you sing right now? Can you-
right, I have
Yeah,
this
yeah.
knee
Sing me a
problem. What do you think? Yeah. Or
Sing me a note.
Don't you love that train monkey?
And I'm like, no, you got $100. I mean, the other thing that I also don't tell people, I just say, oh, I teach at a university because I don't want to educate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
You
want
get
to
tired of
educate
it.
you on a plane. I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't want to educate you. You're not going to know what I do anyway.
It's the great thing about COVID, though. Now we can wear the masks and pretend like we don't want to do it. But yeah, it's the minute you say, I teach voice and opera, and they go, is there a degree in that? Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Well,
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
We could talk all day on this subject, but speaking of respecting time, I think we should probably let these two lovely ladies go. But before
you.
they go, I want them to give the most detailed, clear direction so that people in our community can connect with them, because they do have this EM squared down, and it sounds like they have a lot to offer. I just joined today. I'm a little late to the party, but I did subscribe.
Awesome.
All good. Great. Thank you. And
Excellent.
Elizabeth, I'm gonna let you do that.
Yeah. So you can join the From the Voice of community by just visiting www.fromthevoiceof.com. It's all one word, obviously. And it'll take you to a page that just asks you to, put your name in and sign in, and it's a login for free. And then you have access to all of the different conversations and the articles that are posted, and you can post. I encourage you, both of you ladies, to go in and post that you have this amazing podcast, and that,
Yes.
you can make your own posts. It's not just us that makes the posts. So you can share your own news. You can share.
Yeah,
your
I've
own
wondered
comments,
about
start your
that
own-
because some people are
Yes.
very like, don't post your stuff on our.
No. We'd love for you to post and
we'd
talk
love
about this podcast. Yes.
Yeah,
please.
and
Yeah,
the work
okay.
that you're doing, that's part of it. And to be honest, Denise, we're going to do a little series of videos that encourages people to do that. We've realized that people are sort of like, oh, should I or should I not? So anyway, yes, do post. You can also find our coaching and mentoring at www.em2connect.com. So it's em2connect.com. And then we do a lot of stuff on social media, on Instagram. We do our Saturday morning Instagram live, and our Instagram handle is @fromthevoiceof_. I don't know why we have an underscore, but we had to have an underscore. So there you are. So you can find us, you can DM us in all those different platforms. And as you can tell, we're always happy to chat.
Thank you so much
Yes.
for having us today. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. We
Yeah,
appreciate
just
you.
supporting each other in this. That's what we all continue to do. So,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
all right. Have a wonderful
Thank
day.
you. Thank you so much for listening. We are very grateful that you joined us today.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe, write a review, share it with a friend.